All right, looks like we have everything going, so apologies on that. I'm just gonna step back real quick and start over. So again, hello everyone. Welcome to the 2024 UAF Arctic Innovation Competition presented by UCLA Coal Mine. My name is Pearson Clark, and I'm a UAF College of Business and Security Management student studying business administration with a concentration in marketing. I am honored to be your EMC this evening for the second night of the main division semifinals. These are the top 10 ideas. 5 competitors presented last night, and tonight we hear for 5 more. As a reminder, they are competing for cash prizes of up to $15,000 and 4 kicker prizes valued at $2,000 each. The Arctic Innovation Competition awards over $45,000 in cash prizes and awards, and this would have been impossible without the generous support of many of our beloved sponsors. Founding sponsors have supported AIC in our innovation and economic development mission since 2009. That list includes AEDC, Design Alaska, Doyon Limited, FEDC, Kinross Alaska, JEDC, and Northrim Bank. Competitors are eligible for kicker prizes, regardless of their placement within the top 10. The Educational Legacy Fund, Alaska NSF EPSCoR, Mount McKinley Bank, and Respect support kicker prizes. Alaska 529 supports the Cub and Junior divisions. They are providing 7 education-free savings plans, scholarships at $2,000 each. The Classroom of the Future Award, one of my favorite awards, is announced and awarded at the finals. One teacher who incorporates AIC in the classroom is randomly selected for a $2,000 award. Want to vote on your favorite ideas? Fan favorite voting allows you to select your favorite idea in each division. Recipients will receive $100 and, more importantly, a unique Lego trophy, which I have here with me. Thank you to Chris Marock from Allstate for sponsoring this award. Cast your vote once per day, starting Saturday the 13th and closing at noon on Friday the 19th. Tonight, we have an expert panel of judges joining us. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Jack Wilbur, the Judges Chair from Design Alaska, John Bittner of Alaska Small Business Development Center, Jim Coley, representing Mount McKinley Bank, Brian Holst, joining us from the Juneau Economic Development Council, Jessica Taft from GCI, and last but not certainly least, Justin Seavey from UCLA Coal Mine and a UAF MBA graduate. We want to shout out our presenting sponsor, UCLA Coal Mine. You are all invited to the finals and UCLA awards ceremony that will be held at the Westmark Fairbanks Hotel at 1 p.m. on Saturday, April the 20th, for food, door prizes, and the final round of presentations. Now, let's get started with the presentations. Each competitor has 5 minutes to present their ideas, followed by 5 more minutes of questions from the judges panels. First up is Polyquicks. Let me know when you are ready. Give me a thumbs up, and then once the timer starts, please start your presentation.
Hi, I'm Vienna Mott, CEO and co-founder of Polyquicks. Next slide, please. There are 256 million Americans in the United States who are of voting age. Of that, about 50% are registered to vote. Of them, about 2/3 voted in the last federal election and a dismal 15% in their local election. Studies show that there are several reasons for this, but some of the most prominent ones are a lack of civic education, poor media literacy, and the passion we often feel immediately when we see a headline. On top of all of this, politics can be kind of boring. Next slide. So our solution to this is Polyquicks. Polyquicks uses our specially trained LLM to pull factual information from government websites to provide people with information that allows them to become informed and confident voters. We allow our users to have digestible and accessible material through several means, including multiple languages and clicks for words above an 11th grade level. Research has found that this is an appropriate level where we can provide information to users and they're able to digest the information without getting caught up in the words. Rather, they can view nonpartisan factual data and make their own conclusions. We have different features that we use in order to do this. Some are shown here. And next slide, please. One of my favorites, though, is Polymatch. This is an AI method that we use to match people through a simple quiz with candidates and politicians based on their beliefs, not their party affiliations. We also offer policy explanations, quizzes and polls, a game board, kind of Candy Crush style, candidates and politician data, and also current events information. And I'd like to highlight that this is not news in the way that we're used to hearing news as a sensationalized headline. Rather, it's factual information such as this person just won this county clerk election, or this bill has just been introduced into the Senate. Next slide, please. So while we are a political app in many ways, we liken ourselves more to the ed tech market. This is a $19 billion market that's growing. And while we assume that our market is probably around that 256 million Americans who are of voting age, we know that it's really growing pretty rapidly as people approach 18, people are becoming more interested in politics at a younger age. And even some of our partnerships that we've begun are with people in high schools and colleges who are trying to implement this into their curriculum to try to get people a little bit on the younger side more interested in politics. Next slide. We assume that we'll have a base user group, and this will come from our marketing strategies. And then over time, we will add clients and revenue both in a linear fashion. So the way we will market to these people is through social media, university and high school appearances, event and conference attendance, and leveraging our partnerships. We also anticipate realizing revenue through advertisements, paywalls, sales of aggregate data, merchandise, and partnerships. Next slide. So there are a few different competitors that we have reviewed, and I also included Duolingo here because, as I mentioned before, we really are an educational app, and they've really nailed the interface for younger voters and younger users. So that's something that we've tried to kind of use as a little bit of inspiration, but again, in the political sphere. So then we also have compared ourselves to ActiVote, Ballotpedia, and Relevote. All of them have good data to some extent, but they're really lacking robust local data, especially, and something that's really interesting for younger users. Next, please. So our team is comprised of myself, Margaret Sakona, Jason, and of course, Polybot, our AI friend. We also have some established partnerships and multiple volunteers who span everything from education to politics to UI UX, and these are consistently growing, and we're in conversations with several more folks. Next slide. So we know that there are several opportunities that we have in the long run, but right now we're currently raising funds so that we can accelerate our app launch. We're currently expecting to launch in August, but we're trying to get as far ahead of the federal election as possible. Our data is really important at the local level, and we know that long term that's a really great impact we can have on people, being the only group who have this kind of local data that really doesn't exist in any other data set. But we also want to kind of jump on that media hype and get more people involved while they're getting used to kind of voting again and it being really prominent in the news. So one of our main taglines is that you would show up to the poll unsure of who you'd want to vote for, and by the time you leave, you'd be a confident voter and know exactly who you want to vote for through our matching algorithm. Our team is really excited to be part of this, and we're really excited to hopefully educate more people and make them want to learn a little bit more about politics, regardless of their background or beliefs. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Vienna. Are you ready for some questions from our judges? Judges will each get to ask a question in a particular order, starting with Jack Wilbur and then with John Bittner, followed by Jim Coley.
Great, thank you.
Vienna, curious about the matching portion of the application.
Yeah,
how do you
match?
The poly match, where you match the user to the politician that most approximates their own views. That's I think that's the goal, right?
Yes.
So how do you gather or what is the basis basically for your app's collation of the politicians' views?
Yeah, that's probably our most common question. That, and of course the biases in there, which I'll kind of touch on in this response. So we only use factual data pulled from government websites, and we use our specially trained LLM. There are times within the app where that LLM won't be able to pull information that they would want. For example, if there is a candidate and it's the day that they've been announced that they're running, we may not have that information. So we'll offer them some information outside of the LLM, and it's essentially a really nice ChatGPT or Google search, but we'll tell them that that's not part of the data that we've fact checked. For the most part, though, we have this data set at the local, the federal level, and we get it pretty immediately. That information is taken from government websites. We also do give the politicians a chance to review it, not to give us any information that can be changed. They can't ask that we remove their misconduct or their voting records or anything like that. But we do ask them just, can you maybe take a brief look at this, because it's something that would be really helpful. This data set does not exist right now. So it's something that ensuring that, it doesn't leave a bad taste in politicians' mouth is very important to us, but less important than creating educated voters. And so, of course, if that information is, as robust as it can be, there are pros and cons to that, of course. But yeah, we try to match people based on individual beliefs and rank them. So there's a percentage matching. So let's say there's 10 questions and you match on 6 different topics with somebody, then you'd be a 60% match. But let's say you disagree with them on healthcare, you may care about that more than something else and choose to vote for someone else who, you're a 40% match with, but you are more aligned on that top issue.
Quick follow-up. So it seems like that would work with existing politicians, but not
Yeah,
somebody that was running, fresh.
yes and no. And that's why, especially at the local level, their stances are very important, and why we want to have that verified data set. A lot of people are really interested in using our data set once we are ready to publicly make it available. And that's something that they would have to license, of course. But yes, it is much trickier, and that's why it doesn't exist.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Vienna. My name is John. I'm with the Small Business Development Center. Great presentation. I'm really fascinated. We actually just launched an AI center out of SBDC recently, so we're really interested in this technology. I'm a big fan of using AI to try and sort of help people understand politics, but with great power comes great responsibility. What sort of safeguards do you have in place to protect yourself from bad data, bad actors? AI large learning models have been found that if they learn off of other learning models that are bad, it tends to create an exponential feedback loop. So there's a lot of different ways you could be connecting people to politicians that may not have their best interest at heart. Like, what cybersecurity do you have in place to sort of prevent that? Other than, it's not just people fact checking this, is it? Like your staff is fact checking every local election data?
Right. We kind of have a duo authentication there, and that's a great and very common question. So we use government websites, which are more or less we're pretty confident in, but then we also have that we'll review against as well. And those are existing ones, are very backed by big organizations. So these are ones that are very trusted, and people do go to them already. So the idea is that we pull that information from the data set that they have and the existing APIs, and then we run it against the government websites to have that double fact check. And then we also hand check it.
Sorry, I want to leave enough time for Jim to ask one question, but if you end up launching this and it turns out that, like Jack, and I think I'm a little concerned about new politicians not having the same level of push and coverage as existing politicians, would you be able to, like, are you tracking that and tracking sort of the efficacy of your data and your outreach?
Yeah. And yes, for the sake of time, I'll make that very quick and say yes, but I can answer that offline.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Jim.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. I'm just curious. You say you use government information, but yet, I mean, even in banking, we have to get information from multiple sources to make sure it's right. And depending on who's in power, they can slant that information however they want. So you say that's your check, but then how do you verify that that's really the way it is?
Yeah, and maybe I could word this a little better. It's not information about, we're not summarizing their speeches or anything like that. We're saying, this politician introduced this bill or these series of bills. So their stances tend to be this way. but we cannot promise that entirely. So it's more so things that are associated with the politicians, their voting histories, their trading past, things like that, where they're getting their funding from. And again, sake of time, but I can answer more about that offline as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our second presenter this evening is Finn Ostgaard, explaining the idea, Finn, redefining rigid gear storage. Once you see your slides, give me a thumbs up to start the timer, and you'll be ready to present.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Alrighty, I'm good. I got the slides. Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about boxes, gearboxes in particular. So on the left we have cases, and on the right we have totes. Those are the most common gearboxes that we find in the industry today for outdoor gear storage. And the only difference between the two are cases have a hinge lid, totes have a lid that totally come off. Cases are geared towards storage and protection, where totes are more geared towards storage and transportation. And there's pros and cons of each platform. One of the big things that I noticed personally was that there are no premium totes on the market at all. They're all lower cost, budget oriented totes that really, if you use them in cold weather, they're going to blow apart. And so that begged the question of, is there something that could be designed that could excel at storage, protection, and transportation? Next slide, please. And so that brings us to the tote. That's my play on a utility tote. And it's combining the benefits of a premium case with the advantages of the tote platform. So on the left, the premium case advantages are having a lid on the gasket, so it will seal and protect your the goods inside, and then it's super durable. If you can see the scratches on that red lid there, scratches but does not actually break. And on the right side, we have showing that the totes, the benefits from that platform is they're nestable, they're stackable, and I don't have a picture of it, but you can imagine if the lid comes off, you can also just use it as a big bona fide bin. Next slide, please. So combining that along with a bunch of user functionalities integrated in the box portion of it. So we have rigid handles on the long and short side, so you can carry it in different orientations. You have the option for soft handles on the short or long side. Once again, more options to carry it. We incorporated gutters on the lid, so the lid doesn't hold water and it'll drain off. We have lashing slots on the short and long sides, and those are great because you can secure your box down and still access the inside. So you don't, traditionally right now you have to run a strap over it, undo your straps if you want to get to whatever you have on the inside. But if your situation requires you to run a strap over it to secure your box, we have these lashing channels in the lid that'll keep your strap from sliding off. And they're also super rugged and stout. I can stand on these prototypes and they are not going to break. Next slide, please. So continuing on just the functionalities on the top right shows our utility hole corner. I haven't come up with a great name for that yet, but there's a spot where you can attach a lid leash so you don't lose your lid. Attachment points, you can run cable TSA locks in there if you want to lock your lid down, shoulder strap attachment points if you want to throw the thing on your shoulder and go, and another spot that you can actually secure and strap your box down if you want. All the parts on these are replaceable, and they are attached with stainless steel hardware, so you're not going to deal with corrosion down the road. And it just uses simple tools to swap them out. Phillips has a screwdriver and then like a hammer. And so that was one of our main design objectives, because these are designed to be used out in the middle of nowhere and you're not always going to have a ton of tools to use with them. Our other primary design objectives, we just went over having maximum user functionalities, and then we really wanted to look at the durability and operability in cold weather. So our latches you can use with gloves. There's nothing too small or fragile on them. They're just simple and robust. Next slide, please. And so who can use these? Pretty much anyone who's going to be in harsh conditions. They adapt to four-wheelers, snow machines, boats. They fit in airplanes. So any rural users, field scientists, outdoor recreationalists. It's really a huge list of people that I feel this is applicable to. And the more I've gone into this, the more I've seen people approach me like, hey, this is exactly what I need. So that's been really exciting to see. Next slide, please. These will be rotomolded in Montana, or these are rotomolded in Montana, and they're made out of low density polyethylene, which has very strong low temperature characteristics. Rotomolding inherently, as it rotates in the machinery, your corners are thicker wall thickness, which is great for a gearbox because that's going to be your typical impact points. So it's a stronger gearbox. And our manufacturing facility, they will regrind all their waste and they send it back to the resin, and they're recycling that to make brand new black resin for black rotomolded parts. So next slide, please. How will this be successful? It's really the only premium tote developed, and so it's night and day before ahead of anything on the market, I feel like. And it's a Alaskan company made in the USA, so we're adding value to the Alaskan economy and lower 48 jobs. And next slide, please. Last slide. So I feel like it's not a groundbreaking idea, but it's a very thought out idea and has potential on a global scale, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Thank you, Finn. Let's see what questions our judges have about your idea. Brian, Justin, and Jessica will ask questions this round.
Okay.
Thanks, Finn. Great job. I really like this. I'm struck by how simple it seems to be, that you basically take the latches off and you've made the distinction between the tote versus the box. And so I got two questions. One, and I'll ask them both and you can answer both. Does it keep hot, hot, and cold, cold? And what would stop somebody from, I mean, it seems so simple that I would think that whoever makes these things would just see your brilliant idea and go, I can do that.
Super valid. So first question, keep things hot, keep things cold. I actually have struggled. Everyone calls it a cooler. I'm like, it's not a cooler. It's like a gearbox. So single wall, 0 R value, no installation value. Later down the road, I always thought it'd be cool to have like a Russian doll slip in there. And so you could have it as like a soft cooler that fits in there, and then you use the rigid plastic to protect it, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. Second question, addressing, yes, I've been asked that a lot. Why can't someone just copy this? And it's like, yeah, I'm blown away. This potential exists there, and it's so simple. And so definitely could be copied. I have a latch system that would be really cool and patentable. I just did not proceed on my first iteration because it required injection molding, and those molds are really expensive even for smaller parts. But I have a whole latch system that would really differentiate this, and that would be very patentable. And I think the other portion is the marketing aspect of a product like this. As being Alaskan, we're like in the mecca of outdoor gear. And so while other companies can copy that, man, if I pull that Alaska card hard, like I feel like that's a way to differentiate. And then the patent system, it would really make it a unique box, not just these off-the-shelf latches. So, Jessica?
Thanks. I'll go next. Quick question. What do they retail for? Is the first piece and second piece, who's your target audience?
Hey, sorry about that. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties again, so just give us a sec and we'll let you guys know when it's back up and running. All right, guys. So looks like we're still trying to handle some of the technical difficulties on our end. So in the meantime, I'd like to remind you all that the finals are going to be hosted at the Westmark Hotel in Fairbanks here, April the 20th. So if you are able to make it, please try and come. If not, like Mauro was saying, our other staff, there are travel stipends available if you have not completed the application to those. Again, we'd also like to shout out our sponsors. Huge thanks for making the AIC possible and keeping us going on strong. Again, there is fan favorite voting happening. This is going to be for this little trophy right here. Very cool. I would like to get one if I could, but I can't, unfortunately. But please vote for your favorite ideas in hopes that that person will receive it along with a prize, cash prize. Again, that fan favorite voting is going to be starting on the 13th, and then that will be closing on April the 19th at 12 p.m. So you have until then to get your fan favorite voting in. All right, so thank you, Finn, for presenting what you've got so far. We are going to continue your questions at the end of today, so we're going to loop back around to you. But for now, we're going to be moving on to our next presentation, which is from Daniel Wren, explaining the idea DART, detection of antimicrobial resistance toolbox. Excuse me. Once you see your slides, give me a thumbs up to start the timer and you'll be ready to present.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Wren. I'm a graduate student at UAF, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about DART, Detection of Antimicrobial Resistance Toolbox. And yes, the name gets me too sometimes. Next slide. So imagine that you have a mild infection, say like strep throat, and your doctor prescribes you antibiotics and they don't work. And they prescribe you a different type of antibiotics and you're still not getting any better. Well, that is antimicrobial resistance. It's the ability of bacteria to survive even though they're being exposed to medication or antibiotics. And it's a very serious public health threat. It's global in scale, but let's just talk about the US for a moment. Here in the US, every year, there are about 35,000 people who die from resistant infections. We incur $22 billion annually in healthcare costs from antimicrobial resistance, and an additional $35 billion due to a loss of productivity because people are sick. Next slide, please. Now, if you are living in rural Alaska, you're likely to have other challenges like limited access to water or waste infrastructure, and that can increase your risk of bacterial infections. You're also more likely to have limited access to healthcare services, which means that you can be at a higher risk for a poor outcome if you do get a resistant infection, right? So imagine now that you're a healthcare provider or a public health official or a researcher, and you want to test samples out in rural Alaskan communities to see if there's resistant bacteria there that people should be concerned about. Well, you're more likely to be off the road system, right? So transporting those samples from your location to a lab is going to add additional time till you get your answer. So you're looking at days or weeks that you have to wait to figure out whether or not this bacteria is resistant to antibiotics. So imagine what if you had a tool that you could use right there. Next slide, please. So that's why we're developing DART, and it will allow rapid detection of antimicrobial resistance genes on site. So you can go from sample to extracting DNA, to genetically sequencing that DNA and then using our novel data analysis pipeline to get a user-friendly and accessible report all within one workday. I do want to highlight that this tool is meant to be really portable. So that genetic sequencer that you see there in the middle of my sort of time diagram, that is a sequencer that already exists. It's actually, I have it here in my hand. It is like the size of a Snickers bar. So you can take this really wherever you need to be doing testing. And it's built by a company called Oxford Nanopore. So it's already globally distributed and available at scale. And so our tool, our novel data analysis pipeline that then will identify antimicrobial resistance genes and provide a report, then can be distributed as a software package. Next slide, please. So how are we going to succeed? Well, first, we're interested in implementing solid science. So we've already published on some of the testing that we've done on components of our data analysis pipeline. I'm more than happy to take questions about it. And you can also follow that link to look at our publication. Just came out last December, so we're really excited about that. We're also interested in leveraging existing market potential. So there's already a lot of interest and investment in looking at antimicrobial resistance research and also making innovative tools to address the public health challenge. So just looking at the CDC, for instance, over the past 8 years, they've invested over $480 million in AMR initiatives. We also see it as a strong suit that we're using existing hardware and reagents like the MinION sequencer because they're already globally distributed. And our software package that then could be distributed worldwide is incredibly versatile. So we're talking about antimicrobial resistance here, but you could retool it and use it in a variety of markets, say looking at cancer genes in human samples or heavy metal resistance in bacteria. We're currently engaging in customer discovery and we're listening to potential customers about their pain points, friction that they're already experiencing. We're engaging in innovation training and I'm receiving entrepreneurial mentorship from Alaska Center ICE. So we are really trying to build up for success here. Next slide. I do want to briefly thank my advisor, Dr. Devin Drown, the Drown Lab, our colleagues, Alaska Center ICE, BLAST, and Alaska INBRI, and I am happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Well done. Jack will start with the judges' questions, followed by Jim and Justin. Jack, what questions do you have about this idea?
So nice presentation, Danielle.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the connection between the device that already exists and what you are proposing. So you're proposing a software package that could be used by this device to generate reports?
Yes, it would be used in tandem with this device. So the software package that we're developing can't be used with just any sequencing technology. It's inherently sort of connected to this device. In one way, it's kind of nice because this company does have a history of connecting with inventors, people who have made data analysis pipelines and sort of distributing it to existing customers. So yes, so it is sort of connected inherently because of the technology.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, again, great presentation. I guess my one question is what keeps the device maker from just coming up with software and cutting you out of the whole process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Hopefully they don't see this competition and get any ideas. Yeah, so I think that we're coming from a very unique motivation. And so we've been motivated to come up with something that's really innovative to address this specific challenge. So Oxford Nanopore does have bioinformatic pipelines that look at looking for specific pathogens, but they haven't really made anything quite like this yet. And I think that's because we're really coming from a standpoint of dealing with the challenges of rural Alaska and really needing that portability and quick time to answer. And so I think that's sort of pushed us in a direction that they haven't reached yet.
Thank you. Justin?
Well, and so I think I have two questions. So I understand that I think you said the novel piece of this is essentially the data analysis app. Like you guys kind of pick up where the hardware leaves off. And you mentioned utility in rural Alaska. So I'm curious, is this like a cloud-based sort of option? Do you have to have internet connectivity, or does it work in places where there's less connectivity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our objective is to make this so they can operate offline. So you would not have to have internet access. All the computing and all the data that would need to be there would essentially be on a very portable GPU, and so you wouldn't have to have internet access.
And then I think my other question is, can you speak a little bit about where in the process this would be applied? Like, are we talking about preventative measures, looking for bacteria that may exist on common surfaces, or is this diagnostic? I go to the doctor and he says, you have an infection, but we don't know what kind or what antibiotic to give you, kind of thing.
Yeah. So really both. So it could be used at point of care, and that's a great point, talking about what antibiotic to use. And that's the benefit of having this sort of information of what genes are there, right? So then it tells you not only is this resistant, but it's resistant to X, Y, and Z. So we're going to prescribe you A. So it could be used in that aspect. I think it could also be really powerful in terms of surveillance and prevention. So for instance, looking at sewage or those communities that do have sewage or wastewater treatment plants, you could test there and have sort of an early warning system. So I think it could be used at really both points of the spectrum.
And I guess just as a final question, where this is, I guess it's a diagnostic test. Is this the sort of thing that you would need FDA approval and clinical trials to ultimately implement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that if it were going to be used, certainly on clinical samples, and you were going to be using as a diagnostic, yeah, then that probably would have to be a conversation. And so it may be that looking at prevention and surveillance and sort of environmental samples would be a better route to go, especially at the onset. And then it's nice too, because hopefully you're preventing people from getting sick in the first place, as opposed to playing catch up after they've already contracted an illness.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Danielle, I have a question. Just on this last about preventing, this identifies, how is it preventing? Just because it identifies in a place so somebody else doesn't get something? Is that what you mean by prevention?
Yeah, it's really about having knowledge. So as a public health, on a public health level, saying that, okay, we know that this resistant organism is present in this place, and so we can be on the lookout for infections. And yeah, and also seeing novel pathogens getting a new resistance gene.
All right, thank you guys. Before we move on now, we'd like to take a moment to highlight our kickers, which award $2,000 each. Firstly, the Alaskan Student Kicker is sponsored by Mount McKinley Bank. Fun fact, Mount McKinley Bank is the oldest and largest local financial institution in Fairbanks. Next is Respect Engineering, who sponsors the well-known Arctic Kicker. Respect specializes in innovating mission-critical solutions that enhance client success through integrated consulting and IT services. NSF Alaska, EPSCoR, sponsors the Climate Adaptation Kicker. They were created in 1979 to identify, develop, and best use the state's academic science and technology resources. Lastly, the Educational Legacy Fund sponsors the Sustainability Kicker. They support organizations involved in public and STEM education, experimental environmental education, and sustainable business degrees. All right, and our next presentation up is Rick Wilbur with Arctic Garden Tool. Remember to watch the countdown clock. Rick, once you see your slides, give us a thumbs up and the stage will be yours.
Hi, thank you. Next slide. My name's Rick Wilbur. I'm a fourth generation Fairbanks Alaskan. I'm married to a Yupik woman from Quinnahock, and a lot of this idea comes from the Yupik culture. So I'm drawing inspiration from that. I also have submitted ideas in the past for this competition with the double-bladed ulu in 2021 that I kind of use that as a basis for this idea as well. This Arctic garden tool, this came to be as a product that I was looking into getting some gardening tools. I was cutting, we were cutting some meat with our uluks in the kitchen, and this kind of idea came about. It's a curved bladed, a curved handle with a blade or an attachment on the end. Next slide, please. And it can have, it's made for the initial 1.0 garden tool is made for the home garden in the garden box. It could have different attachments like a rake or a hoe or a spade, shovel, etc. The handle and shaft of the tool came from a curved door panel removal tool. It's just somehow happened to come across that in my research, and I like the angled design of it, especially for a digging aspect. So that's where I like the angle originally. And then the hoe design was specifically made in the shape of a uluk to make it more familiar for villagers to understand the usefulness of the tool. So a lot of rural gardeners and tundra gatherers could relate to the product. Next slide. And so here's all the tools laid out for you to look at. Next slide. So then I came up with the 2.0 version of this, which is a movable angled locking mechanism that came from a folding hand truck with a push button. So this can allow this angle to be 180 degrees, 45, 120, it can be inverted if needed, etc. So this is kind of the new version where if I want an angle on my tool, I can put it in that position. If I want it to be straight, as maybe a traditional tool would be, I can leave it in the straight position. So this gives me different angles to use my tool in. The handle is connected by a threaded pipe and nut to show the ease of putting it on and off the center hand truck push button. Next slide, please. And again, you can see those different angles that this can be put into. Next slide. So this is some of the tools that I've come up with the attachments to the handle. You know, future tooling will make this more streamlined and look in a more professional manner. But this is what I've come up with so far. I just started this product in January, so this is where I've gotten so far. Next slide, please. You can also use a longer handle. So the handle is made to be taken on and off, and you could have a long handle like a shovel, or you could have a short handle like a garden box style handle, where it's a length of a hammer or that nature. Next slide. And so the attachment itself, going into that push button angled mechanism, would be like a broom, where the female end would be inside the push button, and the male end would screw into it and make the handle or the attachments on the other end.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Jessica Taft will start the questions, followed by Brian and John.
Sorry for that. I think like many of you, I needed to like move around a little because it's a bit of time here. Thank you for the presentation, and it was an inspiring idea. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you see a larger scale production? Like, what does that look like for you? Are you manufacturing it and selling it retail in local stores, or what does manufacturing and sales look like to you?
Right. So this product just came about within the last few months. So this is still prototype style product, where I'm just finally getting it to the stage of the look of it, what kind of handle I want for it, the length of handle, the things like that. So next steps would be patents if necessary, or talking with tooling manufacturers about getting molds made, things of that nature.
And do you see it selling primarily in rural Alaska? Do you see a market for it other places, or who do you think your target audience is? Where's your market?
Well, the inspiration came from the rural aspect of it with the Ulu design of the garden hoe, but I think it could be used for all gardening purposes, from the inner city to rural. Um, I didn't get into it because I was lost for time, but also the long-handled staff that could be also used as a fishing spear. It could be used with the attachment on top with a compass, or it could be a GPS attachment on top, something like that if you're walking through the woods, for that rural aspect of it as well. Those are just other ideas in the future, maybe.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. I think this is really clever. So I got kind of two questions in my mind. One is trying to understand the value here, because you are it's convenient, I think, because it's just one. You have fewer tools, but they seem like very simple tools anyway. So maybe a little bit of value. And then how strong is this? I mean, especially when you put that long pole on there, I'm just imagining some leverage. What kind of materials are you using to keep it strong?
With the shorter handled one, your hand force isn't as much, but I think hand gardening isn't going to hurt the tool as much. If you're getting to a longer handle with a lot of digging force or things of that nature, we could run into that issue. Potentially, this is made out of a high plastic, but a heavier plastic, but it could be turned into a metal product potentially, with a push button gear it's more metal and robust. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. So you've got the connector piece there that you've developed. Do you need, like, if I want to use it with a trowel, or if I want to use it with things like that, do they need to be? Am I going to have to buy that through you as well, or can I use the existing tools?
Well, this part of it would have the handle on one end with where you'd screw it in and take it off if you want a different handle length. This side you'd screw in the attachment, whatever attachment you wanted for that purpose. Say it's a spade the first time, then it's a rake the second time. You take it on, take it off, accordingly to what you need it for.
So those attachments would be another product. They're not like, I can't just go down and use my trowel and jam it in there.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. And so you're selling a whole system. It's going to be
right.
the rods. It's going to be the articulator. It's going to be all the tools that you showed us. All that. That's right. The product.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. I know you got cut off, so I didn't quite get it. I wasn't sure if you were just selling the articulating piece, and then I'd have to come up with the rest.
Yeah. So you can see how this moves at angles. So that's how that part works. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then this shows how this kind of screws together into the shaft. This would be like the broom handle thing I was talking about. so that it would come into here. This would be the handle itself, and this would be the attachment on this end. So it
Yeah.
all works together.
I find this really really creative that you do this. So what is really the value point here is that you've created this super convenient way to do many tools with
Right.
fewer parts. Is that the concept?
Multiple functional tools that you use that if you want a certain angle for your tool, whether it be a digging tool for one purpose, or the reverse hoe, or it also reminds me of, you know, those army shovels that you could turn into a pickaxe versus a shovel. You can make that 90-degree angle. That's kind of a similar product, but this is a different way of doing that, maybe.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, judges. Thank you, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right, so next up presenting this evening are going to be Eric Williams and Maya Schroeder, showcasing Quayside. Eric and Maya, ensure you can see your slides, and then once you've done so, give us a thumbs up before starting your presentation.
I'm waiting until there's followed.
Can't yet see the slides. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Williams, and this is Maya Schroeder. We're thankful to be here today in beautiful Alaska. Our role at Quayside is to lead the team as we design, build, and deliver our project management software to software developers and the world. Next slide, please. Oh, this is an old presentation. I maybe sent the wrong link. Interesting. We're gonna wing it. So the objectives of today are going to be to share our vision, get feedback from the audience, and to have fun. Next slide. So how do you start a project? How do you decide how many resources you allocate towards it? How do you decide which task is the next most important to complete? Next slide. So in March of this year, the Project Management Institute released a report that showed that 74% of projects do not meet project objectives. This is really, really important because projects represent the engines of an organization and how they achieve their organizational goals. Failures of these projects can erode stakeholder trust, though. They can waste valuable resources and time, and in the worst, most severe cases, they can precipitate the downfall of the organization itself. Next slide, please. Yeah, so Maya and I are early in our careers, but we both manage software development projects and found that the failures sort of come with a lot of this pre-planning that has to be done with the projects. So with Quayside, we want to bring that forward in time and start contributing faster. Further, we've examined over 100 project management tools in the market and found that they didn't help us intelligently manage our projects. Next slide, please. So with Quayside, we hope to really accelerate this progress. Maya, do you want to talk about these ones?
Yeah, so first, when you go to Quayside, it will ask you what your project is about, and you'll input a little phrase of what your project is, and it'll start building out your project for you using our LLM. And then it'll prompt you to answer what's next and give you tips about what you should do and what you should be on track to do. And with this, you'll have different views, like a graph view that breaks your project down, or maybe a Kanban view so that you can view your project in different lights. And then as you go along, it'll integrate with GitHub and, Google Drive so that you can track your progress without having to manually input tasks and take valuable time away from things you could be using to do your project. Next slide. So Quayside was started last year in July 2023. We've had a lot of feedback and interviews about what we can do to make Quayside an app that software developers and project managers can use. And so it turns out that everyone has project management issues and we're going to solve them. So right now we have a team of about 4 to 5 people working on Quayside. We're a group of project managers and software developers that have experience in web development. And so we're developing Quayside every day. And how do we make this a reality? Well, you can actually go to quayside.app right now, and it is live, and you can try out the generating a task and breaking it into a tree. So since we're a team in project management and software development, we get to give ourselves feedback and make this the kind of app we want. And so the awesome thing about this is that it's built on Google Cloud, which means that it's almost infinitely scalable, and we're never going to be limited to the number of users. The next slide. So this is our revenue model. We will consider Quayside a success when we can complete projects effectively, and then we can start making money off of it. So we have 3 tiers: a free tier where you can start experimenting with the application, a team tier, which is $8 per user per month, and then a business or organization tier, which is $5 per user per month with minimum of 20 seats. And since each seat is 15 cents per user, this will generate profit. Next slide, please. So these are who we're going to partner with to create Quayside. And next slide. And next slide. And thank you so
All right. Thank you, Eric and Maya. Are you ready to answer the judges' questions about Quayside?
Yes.
All right. All right, Jim, we'll go ahead and start with you.
All right. So I've seen software before that kind of does this. So how is this different? I mean, it plots it all out. You got your little diagrams and everything. So I'm kind of curious how this works a little different. I didn't get the difference.
Yeah, definitely. So large language models like ChatGPT are fairly new. And so what we do is we leverage a lot of the technology there to sort of act as a project manager. And so what you do is you plug in sort of like the name of your project and some key parameters like the budget and the milestones you need to hit. And then it'll generate all of the different tasks for you. Then it takes all of those tasks, estimates the time for them, develops the timeline, and sort of presents you with a project plan.
Okay. So I'm curious how it understands that timeline. I mean, what might work for, a GCI or Usabelli wouldn't work the same as the bank. And so how does it know that?
Yeah, definitely. So it's a part of the iterative process of Quayside. So we connect with coders' development environment, so we can actually see the productivity through each task and their experience in doing those sort of tasks. And we can take that same data to help modulate the progress and build better timelines.
All right. Thank you. Jessica, all yours.
Thanks. I just want to ask one quick clarifying question before my question. I saw that your connection to the Git repository, specifically GitHub, I hear you just talking about looking at software projects. Is this developed for software projects only or for additional projects?
So we're going to start out with marketing towards software projects because we are software developers ourselves. And then after that, we can expand to other markets as we get feedback from different users of what they want.
Okay, that sounds good. So my question is, you mentioned yourself that you're using a large language model. You also mentioned that the Project Management Institute, PMI, says that approximately 75% of projects are missing key milestones. So it seems like everything your large language model is built on is 75% inaccurate, right? And so how are you possibly identifying the 25% of data sets that are accurate to create your results?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think we're going to be using data sets that are more realistic and based off of projects that have actually been completed. My past experience was actually as a project management consultant, using all of the best practices, the 49 processes that the PMI promotes. And yet we still did see the project failures. And a lot of times those came from 3 separate things: miscommunication of the vision, scope creep, additional things being added on, and then not being able to control the project as well. So those are some of the nuances that we want to address with this product.
So, and I don't want to hog all the time, but I do want to ask, right, what you're largely talking about. We always talk about like people, processes, and systems. And what you're what you're talking about there is the issue with people. And like, I mean, Jim said it, I might be not great at managing a project, and I might have eyes that are bigger than my stomach, and I might be so prone to scope creep. And I that can be the failure of a project, but like they want to be addressed through your software. Can you help me with that gap?
Yeah, so do you want to talk about the notification system?
Yeah, so a lot of the tools we hope to incorporate into Quayside won't just tell you what to do, but they'll help you keep on track. So one of the things, for example, of keeping on track is a notification system. So Quayside will keep track, or you'll input tasks that you've succeeded in, or integrate with GitHub or Google Drive, and it'll help keep track of those for you. And then if you're going off track, you haven't met deadlines, Quayside will give you a reminder, hey, you should go work on this, or hey, you're doing something else when you should be working on this part of the scope. So trying to prevent that scope creep by keeping you directed on the critical path.
Thank you. I'll pass it off.
Well, first off, I want to applaud you both for just rolling with it when you ran into some difficulty with your slides. I personally have been in that situation, so I applaud you guys for not getting rattled and going through with the rest of your presentation. It was really good. I do not have a lot of experience managing software projects specifically, and so I don't know if I'm thinking about this tool in exactly the right way. Are you considering this tool like the overarching project management tool where you're integrating project controls and budget management and all those other kind of things, or is it a smaller piece of that?
Yeah, so the state of the art of project management and software is usually using Agile, which is like a Kanban board of 3 different task links. It's very, very simple. This is sort of taking the best practices of waterfall method, where you plan everything out, and bringing it into a more agile method.
Okay.
It is meant to be holistic.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Eric and Maya, and thank you, judges. Like I said earlier, we are going to be having Finn Oostgaard hop back online due to earlier technical issues. Brian, Justin, and Jessica will be asking questions, and the timer will be restarted at 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm back.
Awesome. I think I was just starting to ask, and we all got disconnected, but what is the retail price of the tote, and who is your target market?
Target market right now, I started as the outdoor recreation industry. And as I've started just marketing this, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting approached by some exploratory geotech drilling companies. Dentists out in Bethel want like 25 of these because they remote out to all the different places they pivot out of Bethel. And so my target market was the outdoor recreation, and that's what opened my eyes to like the potential where else it can be used. And then MSRP, I'm calling it introductory pricing. It's premium, so it's not like an action packer. It's $275, and that's definitely like, whoa, that's premium. But on a dollar per basis, oh, I wish I had the dollar per volume. But we are in the top like 10 percentile out of 25 different premium case companies that I've plotted when I was doing my market analysis like 2 years ago. And so you get really good bang for your buck when compared to other premium containers. A comparable Pelican case with that volume is like a $470 container.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that I think this is a really neat idea. I personally have broken at least 3 or 4 of the black and yellow totes in the picture in your presentation.
Oh man, those
this
commando
winter.
totes are brutal. Yeah.
So, and you see them in every baggage claim in Southeast with people taking things around. So it certainly seems very, very useful. I have 2 questions.
Yep.
And I think you kind of just answered the first one as far as the price point. I mean, as far as price point, this is a significant jump from action packers and just sits just below kind of like a Pelican case. Is that a fair way to classify it?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to put Pelican Case out of business, but I'm not going to do that. But yes, I want to be neck and neck with them.
And then what would be your next, I mean, you've obviously built some of these and you're already using them. Like what's the next step for you as far as expansion or, getting this going?
So right now, I just literally got back to Anchorage. I drove a box truck up of a couple hundred of them, my first batch of manufacturing. Hitting trade shows now, but it would be to keep trying to manufacture in a larger volume. And I want to start pursuing that latch system so I can really differentiate myself. I'm using off the part latches. And so you'll see that same latch on coolers and stuff. And so pursue patenting that latch system and then expand in sizes, and then also accessories for them. Soft handles, shoulder straps, the feet are removable. Sometimes you want slippery feet. You don't want grippy feet. Just really make that product line robust is the
Sure.
plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, Finn, I'm not just saying this, but you just answered my questions. I was like, what ideas did you have about improving the product? And you said size and yeah, that was my question. Because it seemed like it's just one box right now.
It is. So get my toes wet, be like, okay, I can not only make them, I have to be able to sell them. So see if I can sell them. And then once it's like, okay, these actually move. Okay, and now I feel good financially to really dive in and start spending some money and selling some boxes.
And thanks for doing it in Alaska. Is it in that 275? Does that include shipping?
That is for Alaskans. I'm bringing them up. I want to eat the costs for us because we have to pay shipping for everything. So that is.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. And that will wrap up all of our presentations for the night. So as I wrap up the main division semifinals this evening, I just want to remind you that fan favorite voting will open bright and early on Saturday, April the 13th at 8 a.m. Fans may vote once daily for each division until Friday, April the 19th at noon. This is also another quick reminder to our judges that we are going to be taking a 10-minute break, but we'll gather back online for deliberation using a new Zoom link. For friends, family, and fans, make sure to join us at the Westmark Fairbanks Hotel on Saturday, April the 20th from 1 to 5 for the usability finals and awards ceremony. Again, a huge thank you to our competitors for your presentations and of course our judges for your brilliant questions. It is a huge deal to make it into the AIC semifinals. We appreciate all the hard work and creativity you put into your ideas, plus you all did a fantastic job presenting. Thank you again and good night.